Hello, everybody. It's Stephen from the Idiot Quilter, and here's something I haven't done in quite a while, an interview, but I had to interview this individual when I discovered his YouTube channel and also discovered that he is a fellow Canadian and he is a male sewist and quilter. You are both a male sewist and quilter, are you not? You do both, don't you?
Quilting would be a generous description. I dabble,
Okay.
mostly sewing, but yeah.
Okay. Well, either way, it doesn't matter. You are pushing needle and thread through fabric, and that's what it's all about. And so I want to introduce everybody here that don't know who you are. Cornelius Quiring. Did I say it right?
Correct. Yes,
Okay, good. Now I have to ask you right off the bat, is that your real name?
it is my birth given name on the birth certificate,
Wow.
100%.
I have never met anybody in my life with the first name Cornelius. I think that's really cool. I'm definitely memorable, definitely memorable. So that's a good thing. But you are memorable for more things than just your name. You have a background in sewing that, and you teach classes, and we're going to talk all about that in a second. But I just find your videos on YouTube fascinating. I mean, you explain things so well, and they're entertaining. They're absolutely entertaining as well. I especially like the one that you featured your mother on as well, and the back and forth between the two of you. That was funny, but it was also informative. So let's get right in this now. I've already said your name, and you've already told me before we start recording this that you're located to the west side of Toronto, and I'm on the east side of the city. So it's nice to interview somebody that's pretty much close to home here and a Canadian as well, as I said before. So, how long have you been sewing? Is this something you picked up as a little kid, or are you recent to it, or what?
Well, my mom did a lot of sewing growing up, and so it's sort of always been around. She made a lot of our clothes growing up. And then in my youth, I started dabbling with it a little bit here and there. But then it was in my adult life that I started to take it more seriously and really get into it. So it's hard to always pinpoint where it started. It's kind of
Right.
just been.
It's just been part of your
But
growing up.
I would say the last 10 years have been the most serious.
Okay, and now you mentioned your mother was always a sewer, and you've kind of alluded to how you got started because you kind of grew up in a household where there was sewing, I assume, all the time. And if I might be so bold as to say, do you come from a Mennonite background?
I most certainly do. Yes.
Yes, because I
That
thought
would
so,
explain it.
because it was with that video I saw of your mother and everything. And I have several friends that come from the Mennonite community out towards your
Ah,
end of the world, because I know a lot of Mennonites do live out in around the Waterloo area as well, London area,
mhm.
St. Jacobs, all those places. And they are known, the Mennonites are known for their sewing abilities, especially quilt making and all that kind of thing. So yeah, I could see you grew up around that. So did you have anybody besides your mother who was a strong influence on you as far as sewing was concerned?
Candidly, I would say she would be the one I saw the most, but it was just everyone around me growing up had
Right.
homemade clothes. It was so baked into the fabric of our existence, I didn't really think about it. You know what I mean? It was
Yes. Yeah, it was just second nature, really. I mean,
uh-huh.
didn't know anything different from that. So having grown up around it and that, I would be surprised that you, well, let me rephrase this. I would have thought that maybe you'd had enough of that by the time you hit into your early adult years, but apparently not. So what got you started? You've mentioned you did a lot more of it into your adult life. So what made you want to do, well, first of all, did you always do this as a business, or did you do something else and then open this up into more of a business?
Well, I'll start off with the doing it. I like to make things. I grew up making things. Everyone around us made things. So that's just been my natural approach to most things that I've done in life. And as I got into my teen years, fashion, these sorts of things started to matter a bit more. And so naturally, having made things a lot, why wouldn't I just make clothes as well?
Right.
And so I never had a love or hate relationship with it. It was a tool, a way
Right.
of achieving a goal. So I did it for that reasons. And then in terms of the business side, that's been more of a recent thing. I've transitioned into this. I was a designer before this, graphic and web designer mostly. I did that, and this was sort of this side business that I built up, and I've managed to be fortunate enough to have enough people interested in my antics and do this now as a more serious career.
Right. Okay. So, yeah, so it's always everything's been leading up to this moment in time, then I guess. For you, it's been kind of a natural evolution because a lot of people get into sewing later in life, but they've been doing something else, and sewing is their escape from, if they've got an office job or something like that, and they use that as kind of their leisurely things. But it sounds to me like this is something that really in your pores, and you said that you were always have been a maker as well. So yeah, a natural fit, I would think. So, um, do you have a favorite creation? Well, before I ask you that question, let's talk about your garment sewer. And you talked about getting into that you also graphic arts and web design and things like that. So, did you, um, as a designer, do you design patterns? Do you design unique garments?
Yes, that was one of the main reasons I got into it was to make the patterns themselves. I wanted, I had an accident when I was a little boy, when I was 3. And so as a result of that, the right side of my body, like the arm, for example, is thinner than the left side.
Hmm.
And so a large reason for also wanting to sew, not only being interested in fashion, but wanting clothes that fit me. Like I always found it was just a little too loose
Hmm.
on the right side. It would hang. Most people probably didn't notice it, but I would. And so I wanted to make clothes that were uniquely tailored to fit me. And so that's why the pattern drafting specifically was one of the key interests was, well, I don't want to just make a garment that kind of doesn't solve my issue. Surely I can make things that are uniquely tailored to how I need them to be. And
Right.
so pattern drafting has been at least from when I started to take it seriously, has been at the core of the process. So everything I make, I draft the patterns myself.
So are you a self-taught drafter, or did you take courses, or how did you learn this?
Everywhere and nowhere, I guess what I would say it. So I learned some from mom. I've learned from some courses. I've also learned from just making a lot of mistakes. I find that's the best way to learn.
Yeah, very true.
So uh, unfortunately, this is going to be a very common theme, but I can't pinpoint specific things because I just find everything blends together
It-
so much. It's hard to have a clean line of like, this is what
right.
happened and this is why. And so it's these many different areas and that have come together to inform how I do it.
Well, I think for a lot of us that consider ourselves makers, and that or creatives, it's the creative process is different for each individual. But you're right, it's very hard to pinpoint a moment in time where you can say, well, yeah, I woke up this morning and said, I'm going to be a draftsperson, or I'm going to be a designer, or I'm going to be this or that. And the other thing, it's comes from our experiences, and that's where we learn. And learning from your mistakes, well, that's why I call myself the idiot quilter, because I got tired of YouTube videos when I first got into quilting that they never made a mistake. And I was going, but I'm making an awful lot of mistakes and I'm not really sure what I'm doing wrong or how to get around it. And I decided there was a need on YouTube for someone to be honest about the fact that everything isn't perfect and that you do learn from your mistakes. And I make a lot of stupid, idiotic mistakes. So I became the idiot quilter. So I do understand the process that you've probably been through. So do you have a favorite creation, something you made that you were probably very proud of, and it stands out in your mind as, maybe it was a pivotal moment in your development or whatever, something you just really like.
The first thing that came to mind, or I guess for me, one of the goals was I would eventually want to draft and sew my own coat,
Hmm.
like a dress coat. longer, made out of a nice wool, fancy lining, all those sorts of things. And several years back, I finally decided to take it on and do it. And so, in terms of achievement, it was probably my proudest creation. But interestingly, the one I cared for least, because I guess maybe I'd built up too much expectations around it
Ah, right.
because it was sort of the big goal was, oh, when I can do that, then I know I'm officially able to do this. And oddly, I like it was fine. It turned out pretty decently. When people see it, they think it looks nice, and yet I don't care for it, oddly. And
Eh,
then often the things that I just at the moment was like, ah, whatever, I got it done, end up being the items that I love and wear all the time. Like
right.
I have this button up, band collar button up. When I made it, oh, the amount of mistakes at every step.
Yeah.
I thought it was garbage and I love it. I wear it all the time.
Well, sometimes the things we make that we have the most trouble with, that we just want to get it done, we're not enthused about it or anything. When we're finished it and we look back on it, sometimes they become our favorite items. I've got several quilts that I've made that at the time I was making, I thought this is the quilt from hell. And I'm only doing this now because I don't like to leave anything unfinished. So I'm pushing myself to
Mm.
the end. They end up being my favorite things afterwards. That for some reason there's a magic. It all comes together at the
Mhm.
end. But yeah, so I know what you say about those kind of things. So if and labels are a bad thing, but if you had to be labeled, what kind of sewist would you label yourself as? What are you? I know you're a garment sewer, but do you tend to lean towards the more traditional classic looks, or do you like to experiment, mix things up a little bit, or are you avant-garde, or how would you characterize your style?
The first word that came to mind for me was functional. It's very much a case of like I want, especially lately, I want the garments that I make to be items that I can wear every day, that go with everything, that work. So, for example, I've stopped putting on back pockets on my pants. I just, for me, realized well, I'm at the computer a lot,
Mhm.
but also the butt is the worst place to put things. A phone doesn't fit there well, and a wallet doesn't either. I don't want to sit on them. So I now move those pockets to the very side of my legs. I guess you could call them cargo pockets.
Hmm.
But that is what I mean by function. I still like a really clean profile. So I'm like a minimalist functionalist.
Right,
Yeah, somewhere in that range. Like I want it to look clean, I want it to look crisp, but it also needs to be functional first and foremost.
right. And yeah, go ahead.
I need to be able to live in it every day. You know, these are the clothes that I live and wear every day. I don't make my clothes to look good on Instagram. I've realized it's like they need to wear well.
Well, I think as males, you've hit on something that's very important about men's clothing. I agree. I never thought about not having back pockets on my pants, but I don't use my back pockets for the same reason. I'm sitting in front of a computer or at a sewing machine or whatever. And if you've got your wallet or something like that in the back, it's either popping out or you got this lump back there that you're sitting on,
Mhm.
and cell phones. I have never put my cell phone in my back pocket because, I mean, it's just not going to fit. So, yeah, I think that's a really good thing. But, I think a lot of people or designers, because we have had pockets on the back of men's pants since the beginning of men's pants, probably out there, um, it's more or less, well, it's just part of it. That's what you have to do,
Mhm.
But I like the idea that you're saying, well, no, if it's not functional, why do we have it? And we're men. We don't carry bags usually around us too much, although that is fashionable to a point. But I like the idea of the bigger pockets on the front that you called them sort of cargo style. But yeah, you can get a lot in there. That's
Well, I don't put anything in the front pocket either.
no,
I like to put my hands in there, but like on the side of my legs at the just underneath the front
right,
pockets, I have
right.
these little welt pockets that I traditionally put in the back.
Yeah. Well, I
And
think that's a
I
great
was
idea.
also just putting them there in the back. And then I was like, oh, should I still put back pockets anyways? Because it's just so ingrained that they're on the back of pants.
Yeah, it's not pants unless there's pockets in the back, like that's everybody
Right.
knows this. Yeah, so it sounds like you've got a well, you are a, if you don't mind me saying, you are a slight person, like you're skinny. Let's just say you're
Yeah.
just skinny.
Yeah. Yeah.
On that.
Yeah.
So I know, like, and you said about nice crisp lines and that kind of thing. Yeah, like if you're a heavier man, which I'm not really heavy, but I'm not skinny, but the what they call the slim fit. Oh no, 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 no. A man my age does not have slim fit. We're more classic fit. But it is very
Uh-huh.
difficult to buy clothes to fit older men. There used to be the joke, when I was in my 20s, that old men are constantly pulling their pants up so their waist is up here, kind of a thing. Well, I think I understand why that is, because these pants I buy today, the jeans,
Yeah.
they don't say low rise, but they all feel like it. I always feel like I'm going to lose my pants. Another reason I don't put anything in the back pockets, it weighs them down, but kind of a deal. So it's really nice that you are able to customize what you want to wear for functionality and for proper fit, because the stuff off the rack just doesn't fit. I don't think it fits anybody right. Unless you've
Oh,
got
exactly.
unless you're a model and you've got people dressing you, and they,
Even them, no
yeah,
one, because it's a generic pattern that gets
yeah,
used, and we all have either slightly longer arms, shorter arms, our legs are different. It's like there's
yeah,
no way. Well, a dead clock is right twice a day too, so there's certain people it fits
yeah,
for
something.
great, but
Yeah, true. Very true. So, I assume you work from home. Uh,
I do, yes.
so can you describe your work area? Is it big? Am I picturing something that has this massive cutting table and a massive pressing area, or is it more compact? Or
It's a basement room. It's my little den where time goes to stop. I've blacked out the windows so that way I can do consistent lighting for filming. And so
okay,
it's oh gosh, probably a 30 by 30 foot room.
it's not a bad size.
And yes, I'm very lucky to have that space. And so it's a work in progress. I recently moved into this place, and so I'm still building it out. I have visions of a bigger table to build it out, but it's candidly it's not that glamorous just yet. It's brown walls. That's how it came. But I've got my area where I do my filming. I've got some racks in the other areas. Again, very functional at the
Functional.
moment.
I was
I'm
just going to
a, I'm a
say,
function first.
it sounds very functional. Yeah, I would say that too. But I mean, for all of us that sew in that, our dream is to have, you know, a huge space and everything, labeled, drawers, cupboards, everything nicely laid out. The reality is, for most of us, it's piled high, but
Yeah.
kind of a deal. But yeah, but it is nice to have your own spot. And of course, because you do a lot of videos, yes, you would definitely have to have an area for the setup of all of that. Because what people who don't make videos don't understand is you never have enough light. You can never
Mm.
have the best of sound, and you need areas where you can have multiple cameras. And the more cameras, the better with that. And we are going to talk a little bit in a moment about your whole background in your YouTube creation. But before we go there, I want to know if you have any favorite tool or tools that you like. You have to have them. You couldn't live without them.
I'll give you a couple. I'll start off with the one that everyone needs, which is the sewing machine. I recently got a new one. I've just been using sort of used older machines up until this point that I found in random places, cheap ones, and I got a good quality new one, and I did not know how good they could be until I got it. It's a one of the new Juki
I was
TL
gonna.
series machines. Oh, it is a dream. There's so many little features on it that I didn't know I would want until I had them. Like the needle always being down, or when it cuts the thread, it lifts up. It makes such a big difference, and yet it's such a small feature. I it's all I've been talking about lately.
I've seen your videos about it, yeah, and I've kind of got FOMO there on yeah with those machines because I know that I don't think I've ever heard anybody who owns a Juki say bad things about Jukis. So
You know what? They're not cheap, but if you're fortunate enough to have the resources, I suggest getting it. Because the lesson I've learned throughout my many years of making is good quality tools make a difference.
yeah.
A nice tool goes such a long way. But other than that, I would say a good, I guess I'm not being very creative here, but a really good pair of shears.
Mm-hmm.
And a good pair of shears isn't even that much money, 40, $50. You can get a good quality pair. Um, I've lately been really liking the rotary cutters just for it just gives such a clean, precise cut. They
Yeah.
have a nice cutting mat with a rotary cutter and a ruler. Oh, and an L-shaped ruler, a carpenter's ruler for pattern drafting. Oh, that 90-degree corner, so useful.
Now you see, there's where we
And
probably. Oh yeah, go ahead.
I was going one more, which is a
Yeah.
quilting and sewing tool, is the stiletto, or sometimes referred to as an awl. It's just a little pokey thing, and yet so useful. I use it as an all-around tool that kind of has no specific use and yet so many uses.
Well, I agree with what you've been telling me. First of all, what you said about quality machines, yes, for sure. When I first got into quilting, I bought a cheapo machine from Costco, about $189 with 50 decorative stitches, and I wasn't a quilter at that point in time or a sewist, and I hadn't ever used a sewing machine. I got it because I was a paper crafter. And I thought this was something
Okay.
I could do for card making, like sew through paper and stuff like that. And then I kind of did my first little wall hanging, didn't realize that I was actually doing quilting, and the machine fell
Mhm.
apart. Basically, it fell apart.
Oh boy.
The walking foot broke on it, and then it could have been partly
Oh
me.
geez.
And and then my thread cutter dropped off. I phoned the local quilt store. I said, I walked in, I thought I was going to get a new walking foot, but I decided I was going to get a new sewing machine and I wanted to spend some money.
Okay.
I walked into my local quilt store and they were a Janome dealer, so I'm a Janome boy. Um,
Okay.
and she took me through them all and she was really good with me. And so I came home with my first Janome. I say my first because I have multiples now of it, a house full of them, but of different type of things. But yeah, good quality machines. They're going to cost you, but it's an investment. It really is an investment. So,
I mean, I tell anyone who gets into this, you're not doing this to save money.
oh no, oh no. And
Fabric alone costs more than buying a garment from the store. So,
well, funny story there too. You see the shirt I'm wearing today. Well, my husband makes all of my shirts, and he got into
okay.
this when after I got into quilting. He had always dabbled a little bit in sewing, but nothing too serious. Some curtains kind of a thing, and maybe some Halloween costumes and that kind of deal. He wanted to learn, so there was a friend of his who was doing it online. Well, they were doing private Zooms. He learned how to make his first shirt from there, and he's been making them ever since. But he has my first sewing machine, a Janome one, which is still running as a workhorse. He loves it. But he did try to make a quilt, and he didn't have that much problem making a simple quilt, but he preferred garment sewing. So I just made my first shirt, not this one,
Okay.
but the same thing. He taught me how to do it. We actually did it on YouTube. We took it apart as a series on my channel,
Okay.
and learned to make a shirt. And like he's not really that fond of quilting. I don't think I'm that fond of garment sewing. I mean, it was okay. I was kind of proud of it when I got it done, but I had a lot of guidance from him. So, but you say about a rotary cutter. Um, I didn't realize that people who sew garments who have never quilted, a rotary cutter is kind of foreign to them.
Hmm.
Because you use your scissors to cut out the patterns. So when we did that series, I kind of did hybrids. I said, well, you're using the scissors to go this, but why couldn't you use the small rotary cutter for that? And he goes,
Hmm.
I hadn't really thought of it. I've always used the scissors. And so things like that. But yeah, it's, what we take for granted in the quilting world, we don't realize that people who sew garments, these things are a little more foreign. And you mentioned scissors, good scissors. And I think that if I'm correct about this, you did a video showing your scissors and they're from LDH, which is a Canadian company. And I have
Yep.
several pairs of those too, and they're excellent. I
Oh,
love those
nice.
scissors. Well, I think I've got three or four different pairs of them. So yeah, and again, scissors aren't cheap. Scissors are pricey,
They're
right?
worth they're worth
Yeah,
it. But I have
you got to
their
invest.
rotary cutters are amazing too.
Yeah, I haven't tried the rotary cutters yet, but I've been thinking about that. Yeah. So moving on here, because I know that you have something else on it in a while, so I don't want to hold you up from that. Um, If you had all the money in the world, is there something, either a specific tool or a machine or something that you would buy?
Uh, no, I don't
You've
think
got it
so.
all.
I find uh, I mean, there's definitely stuff I would like to get.
Yeah.
I would, you know what, if there's no money in the issue, no money issues, I would buy a machine specifically to sew leather for shoes.
Mm. Oh, okay.
I'm intrigued by the idea of making my own footwear. It's something I fantasize about, can't justify it, and it's sort of a completely different craft. But if money's no issue, then that means I also have unlimited time. And
Yeah,
so
right. Yes, true.
I'm getting I'm getting one of those machines and trying it out. The idea of making my own shoes or boots is fascinating to me.
Yeah, I have to admit, I have a certain fascination with that idea too. Not probably as much as yours is, to it, but I've always been fascinated by, the leather work that, shoemakers, when you go into their stores, I like the smell of of a
Mm.
shoemaker shop. The smell of the leather, I don't know, it's something that just okay, so enough about fetishes. Uh here. Um, so have you uh ever belonged to like an online or in-person kind of group? Like in quilting, we have guilds, um, and things like that. But what about you? Is there something for people, garment sewers, that brings them together to share ideas or whatever?
I've never actually joined a community. I find I've always kind of been flying solo by myself. But I do have a small community, I guess, of my own folks that have gathered around the content that I share that I regularly chat with.
Hmm.
And so that's probably the closest.
Yeah. Well, that's the
Yeah.
one advantage of the electronic world these days. The internet, Zoom, like we're on right now, YouTube channels, you do create a niche in those areas and you
Hmm.
attract other people like-minded. And it's great. I find it's really great for inspiration and for sharing ideas, and or if I have a problem, there's always somebody out there that has a solution to the problem. So, yeah, it's great for that. So, moving on then, where do you get your supplies for your making of your garments?
I get a lot of it at its Fabricland.
Hmm.
I think you're aware of that. It's a Canadian store. I don't think they
Yes.
have them in the US.
No, they don't have it in the US,
Um,
but we have them here. We had one in our area until recently.
oh, okay.
It kind
Yeah.
of,
And then, but while I was living in Toronto, it's there's still, luckily enough, there's quite a few shops there
mhm,
that have fabric, but also supplies. So I usually would go to local shops, especially with fabrics. I find there's just a need to touch the fabrics. It's hard to purchase online.
right.
Yes, you can get samples. Maybe I'm just not patient enough because I just want my fabric right away
Oh, I don't
to
think
get a
that's
sample,
unusual.
try it out,
Yep.
and then have to wait to get more. I still like to go in to get my fabrics at a store, but then tools are probably online purchases. I'll find there's a handful of different places. Like I get all my cutting supplies from LDH. I really like them. I'm lucky enough to have a bit of an audience these days and gain some channel supporters, sponsors, and so I get supplies from them as well. And other than that, it's usually just a Google away to see where I can find things.
Well, my other question was going to be, but you've already answered it, whether you do a lot of online shopping for your fabrics and that, but you said you like to feel it. And I think that's important for a garment maker, especially. I think I like to feel the fabric as well, but I do buy a lot online. But if I know the name of the company, if it's a brand name, I know the quality of the fabric I'm ordering with it. But I think it's different with garment making because there's so many different types of fabric. As a quilter, we're using primarily cotton. Okay, but there's so many other fabrics for garments. So I could see why you would want to physically go in and touch it to get the feel of it. Um, okay, so do you have any sources of information you turn to if there's something you're not sure of?
YouTube.
University of
I'm
YouTube,
constantly, yeah, I go to the University of YouTube to see what I can find. Also, sometimes just Google to see what blogs have,
right?
what different people have written will be my sort of my primary two sources. But honestly, mistakes. I find mistakes are my best way to learn. And from that, I can kind of get a next step and a next step. Unless there's sort of a specific technique that I'm interested in knowing, I kind of learn by doing. I would say that's my most common way of figuring stuff out. Like, huh, okay, well, that didn't work. Interesting. Okay, how can I approach that differently?
So
A lot of happy accidents, you know?
I would say you're not afraid to make a mistake. And the reason I say that is because there's so many people who get into sewing or get into quilt making, and they get very discouraged very quickly when things don't go exactly right. And I heard someone say it's only fabric and thread. It's not the end of the world. The world's not going to explode because you have a crooked seam or whatever with that. So I would say that you're probably of that mindset too, that, okay, this went wrong. What did I do wrong? How do I correct it? And as you say, that's where you learn from that. So,
It's
yeah.
it's easy, I don't know if easy is the right word, but knowing just trying something then informs the next step, right? So
Mhm.
if I try a thing like, huh, okay, that was the result, it sort of provides the guidance to the next step. And so that way, maybe it's a mistake, maybe it's a learning. Who knows how, we can frame it in different sort of ways of thinking of it because a mistake sort of implies that it's wrong, but it's sort of a guides the path forward.
Yeah, it's
Sometimes
just
it loops back on itself and things, but it's a great way. Just take the first step, try a thing, and then that will guide you forward.
Yeah, it's a process, and
Hmm.
it's a never-ending journey as well. The I always refer to because I used to be a high school teacher before I retired, and we always called it lifelong learning. You just don't
Hmm.
stop. You're always learning. The day you stop learning, I feel, is the day when you're 6 feet under. So you know,
Uh-huh.
I'm not ready for that yet. There's too much more to learn out there. So, let's talk about your YouTube channel. Your YouTube channel is your name,
Yep.
Cornelius Quiring. And so when did you start the channel?
I've been making content online since I was a teenager.
Oh, wow.
And so I've had multiple iterations of this thing. But this iteration of making the sewing videos and stuff started 7, 8 years ago, something like that.
Been that long. I didn't realize it. See, I'm new to your
Yeah.
channel, so I didn't realize you had it that long. Okay,
It
so
was a lot of honestly, the first year I got 0 subscribers. I
mm,
uploaded a video every week and didn't gain a single subscriber. And so it was a lot of I was figuring it out as I was going. I was also learning how to make video content
yep.
better at that point. And so it was just me with a phone and a microphone that I plugged into it and a 6 foot wire. And so I had to make sure I stayed within 6 feet of where I was filming. If you some of the older stuff is still there. If you go there, you can really see the difference. And so I was learning how to film, make content, and also just understanding what kind of content I wanted to make. It's been a lot of experimentation to get to where I am now. And the audience that I have now is candidly from the past few years.
Yeah.
the vast majority. It's been a slow, 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 and it's kind of starting to, you know, that
Right.
hockey stick shape that usually ends up
Yep.
happening.
Well, I think a lot of people think when that those that make videos on YouTube and that just instantly it's just, bang. You just know what you're doing. And I've had so many people say to me, I've said to them, why don't you start a YouTube channel? Oh, I can't. I don't know how to do that. I would never, and I can't afford the equipment. And I said, I started out with my phone and like you, a wired little cheapo. It was a cheapo microphone. I think I bought it on Amazon for $10, and that's how I got
Yeah.
started with it. And so if I look at my earlier ones too, I go, okay, you've come a long way, baby, with it. But there's still lots to do beyond that as well, as you well know, as a content creator. So where do you want to see your YouTube channel go? Do you have some goals for the future and the development of it? And I have to say, before you answer that question, I love your style of videos. As I said earlier, they are both informative and they're entertaining. But I have one question I have to ask you. Why the
Okay.
cowboy hat?
Good question. It's growing up in a Mennonite community, and as a Mennonite, we're the only ones who make this distinction. There's a difference between Amish and Mennonite. The folks that I, I'm sure you have met are most likely Amish folks, and Mennonites tend to be whatever, doesn't matter. I'm nitpicking on differences here. From the outside, we're the same thing. But growing up, I was part of my lineage goes back to Mexico, the Mennonites that went to from Russia to Canada to Mexico in the 1920s. And from there, they emigrated to Paraguay, where I was born. And now I'm back in Canada. But the ones that went to Mexico in the 20s very much picked up. We pick up a lot from where we've been. So we have some Russian words, those sorts of things. We have a lot of Mexican words, Spanish, should I say. But we also picked up a bit of that cowboy culture while there. And so growing up, the grown men wore cowboy hats. The boys couldn't have them. And so
Hmm.
I just thought they were the coolest thing ever. Eventually we left the community and I was in my when I was I would we were had left the community by the time I was in my teens and sort of left it behind. And now as I've gone into my adulthood again, full circle sort of thing, I remember things like, wait, cowboy hats are cool. Like I thought they were cool then. Surely they must still be cool now. And so I just got one because I wanted one. It's like, let me get that cowboy hat that young Cornelius couldn't have. I bought it, put it on, and it just felt right. It's like, oh yeah, yeah, this is it. This is my this is my style. And so I've just worn it since then in my videos specifically as well. Because part of content creation is also sort of creating your own brand
Yes.
identity markers. And there's not a lot of people wearing cowboy hats, I'll be honest. And so that sort of also there's a branding element to it, part of why I wear it. But it just feels right. I like the way it looks. It's fun.
Well, I kind of figured you would say that it was sort of a branding because, yeah, because it now makes when I come across one of your videos, I see the hat, I know who it is immediately. But I
Yeah.
think there was one video you did, if and correct me if I'm wrong. I think in part of the video you were wearing the black hat, and in another part of the video you're wearing the white hat. And you went
Yeah.
back and forth. It was like sort of like the angel on one side, the devil on the other, and all that. And I love that because that I think is what makes your videos very appealing because you are, and I mean this in the most positive sense of the word, you are a character. And it's one thing for someone to be a talking head on a video. It's another thing for a unique personality to come across in the videos, and yours definitely does. So that's what I really watch for. But I knew I had to ask you the question about the cowboy hat, and I thought I would get at least I thought I knew part of the answer, the branding, and I thought, yeah, I can see that in there. And at one point in time, when I first saw your videos, I thought, well, he's wearing a cowboy hat because he's bald. But no, you're not. So that's apparent. Okay, so I
Yeah, got a full head.
Yes, you do. I don't want to keep you for much longer, but I just want to ask you two more questions very quickly. What are your goals for the future? Do you have anything specific that you want to achieve in the next, say, 6 months to a year or wherever, whenever?
I just want to keep growing this thing. I'm having fun with it. It's interesting. You mentioned it being entertaining and informative. That has sort of been my goal. So to hear that is what you're getting from it is music to my ears. I'm really happy to hear that. Thank you. I just want to grow it. I want to keep making making this snowball roll faster and faster down the hill. I would say
Right.
that's my main goal. Pie in the sky goal. I don't know if this is a real goal or not, but I don't know. I think I have a TV show in me. I think what I'm doing on YouTube specifically, I think I can reformat it into episodic content. So it'd be a combination of what I do, but also the videos with my mom. I think having her in the
Yeah.
show as well.
Yeah. Your
And so I
mom's
have
got a
this,
sense of humor. You can see it on there in that video and she was sewing. And yeah, I think that is an attainable goal that you've set. Ambitious, I'm sure, but yes, I could see what you are suggesting here. I think it would, I'd watch, that's for sure on it. But, and my last question for you too is, okay, anybody who wants to start getting into garment sewing, do you have a piece of advice for them? I have a feeling I know what that's going to be, but I'm going to let you tell me what it is. What would you say for them who just want to get into this?
make the thing that you have in mind that you want to make. And it's going to turn out terribly, and you're going to make a whole lot of mistakes. And that is exactly what's supposed to happen. But you've learned a lot in the process, and now you know what you need to work on. And then do it again and make those corrections. And then try after that what you'll need to do after that. But just make that one thing that you want, whatever it may be. And it'll probably be super complex and it's going to go way beyond over your head. But do that. Don't do like, okay, I'm going to start with a simple pillow and that, because unless you want to make pillows, please make a
Well,
pillow.
yeah.
But chances are most folks are not looking to do that first. Make the thing that you want, and
Yeah,
it'll frustrate you and it'll be difficult, but just do it. And then that's where you start.
I think that's
Keep it
very good
simple.
advice.
Don't spend a ton of money. Don't buy the fancy fabrics. Go to the thrift store, get some bed sheets. They're cheap. It gives you a lot of fabric to work with. Borrow a machine if you have to. You can buy a used machine at the thrift store while you're getting the fabric. Chances are there'll be one there. Maybe watch a couple videos on how to thread the machine. Pretty straightforward stuff. And just do. That's my only advice is just do.
I think that's very
Keep it
good
simple.
advice. Yeah, because we're too often when we start something new, we talk ourselves out of it. Oh, I can't do this.
Hmm.
This is too complicated. I don't know. It's going to be horrible at the end. No, you just got to get in there and do it. And like you said, learn from the mistakes, and the next time you attempt it, it'll be better, and it'll just get
Yeah.
better and better. Yeah, practice makes perfect. Well, I want to thank you so much for spending this time with me on the interview. I found it very informative. I'm used to interviewing people who are more quilters than sewists or garment makers than that, but I learned a lot from what you have told me, and I know that my audience will have as well. And I am encouraging all of the people who see this interview to check out your YouTube channel as well as your other social media connections. And I'll have those all down in the show notes for this as well, so people can easily go and check you out. And I wish you the best of luck in your future endeavors, and I will be continuing to watch as well. And maybe we'll connect again in a year's time or something. Come back and revisit this interview and see what we've learned from our mistakes and our fearless
Exactly.
plunge into all of this. So, thank you so much for this, Cornelius. And yeah, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of your sewing journey as well. So, thank you.
Well, thank you very much. It was a pleasure chatting as well. I enjoyed it. It's always fun to be able to offer a little more behind the scenes of what's going on. And but most importantly, compliments to your husband for pattern matching the pocket there.
You
That's
noticed that's his signature one, the invisible pocket. Yeah.
very, very nicely done. I'm impressed.
He's done well. Okay, well, thank you so much for this, and we'll be talking to you again soon, I think. I, in fact, think.
Okay.
I know.